I've been rewatching Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography in the lead up to his latest release, Bugonia, and I can confidently say that I think this one is his best piece of work to date. I saw Bugonia last night and I cannot get it off my mind. I am so excited to see it again when it hits streaming. There is so much that I want to touch on when it comes to Bugonia, from the message, the performance, the visual style. And I think that because it's been out for a little while and the internet is already teeming with reviews, I am going to do a very quick 1-minute spoiler-free review for those of you who haven't seen it. And then I'm going to move on to dissecting it and really talking about it at length. So for those of you who have seen it, we can discuss it together. So if you haven't had the pleasure of seeing Bugonia yet, I would 100% carve out the time to see it in cinemas. I think the score specifically is something that would be best appreciated and consumed on the big screen. So if you are someone like me who doesn't have all the time in the world to go and see a movie, make sure the one you go and see is Bugonia. If you are a fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, I don't think that this one will be disappointing for you at all. If you are someone who has just dipped a toe in the Yorgos pool and you aren't particularly used to seeing disturbing films, this one could be a little bit shocking for you, but I think that the concept is quite easily accessed. And I can't say that for all of his films. Some of them are a little bit too or more avant-garde for a general audience, but I think everyone could have fun with Bugonia. There are some really fun twists and turns, so it's best to go in just as blind as you can and enjoy this film. And for those of you who have seen it, let's get into my full review with spoilers of Yorgos Lanthimos' Bugonia. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous about seeing Bugonia because I was a big fan of Poor Things. It was so grand in its scope. The performances were just out of this world. It was such a wild film. I really loved it. I wasn't so keen on Kinds of Kindness. It just didn't work for me and it felt a little bit self-indulgent. So I was very curious to see where Yorgos would go with this recent release, Bugonia. I can confirm that Bugonia did not suffer from any of the faults of Kinds of Kindness. It was a very tight film. Felt like no time was wasted at all. And it was a lot easier to access overall just as a film and a narrative. It had beats that it was hitting, and whilst it's definitely not conventional by any means at all, it did feel like something that the audience that I saw it with could enjoy it, and it was pretty varied. We had older people, young people, people were laughing out loud. It was a really great experience to see this with a full cinema. I was a little worried that I may be getting tired of the Stone-Yorgos collaboration, but I again think that it shined here. I do think that Jesse Plemons was the standout performance for me here. He was so convincing as this conspiracy theorist character. Emma Stone was obviously great, but I think because of how amazing her performance in Poor Things was, it's kind of almost like hard to top a little bit. It's very interesting that we have seen Yorgos tackle the current climate that we find ourselves in. And we've also seen Ari Aster, who produced Bugonia, do the same in his film Eddington. And the two, I think there's some crossover there. I haven't yet seen PTA's One Battle After Another, but from what I've read, it seems to be doing a similar thing. So we have this trio of films that are trying to unpack what is going on in our society right now. I think that's really interesting, and I hope that we see more films do this, because as someone who has been feeling quite paranoid about the state of the world, I'm glad that these directors are also feeling that enough to put it to screen. It makes a lot of my emotions feel validated. Okay, so now let's head into the specifics of the film. We open with the bees, and they are a thread the whole way through, which I thought was a clever way of setting the film up, much like Yorgos does in Killing of a Sacred Deer, with the tight shot of a beating heart to indicate many of the film's themes and messages. Visually, there is just no questioning Yorgos. I think his vision is amazing, and him paired with Robbie baby Ryan. It's just always phenomenal. And what we see in Bugonia is the continuation of these signature styles, the wide angles, great use of negative space, and an overall abstract, uneasy quality to the entire picture. I love these dolly shots of Plemons on his bike racing from different locations, and then the shots of Emma Stone walking through her office paired with the very theatrical score. It all just feels very doomy, like the end is nigh, which is ultimately what ends up happening in this film. So it's clever how it creates this feeling from the get-go. Another thing visually that I noticed and enjoyed was the clinical cold tones of Emma Stone's character's surroundings. Her corporate world had this sanitary nature to it, and even her skin tone here, she is so pale in this film. Her morning routine is akin to Patrick Bateman's, which I found quite comical. Then we have the world of the brothers, which couldn't be more opposite. And this is so warm in tone. You know, it's got these yellowy, orangey, warm lights to it, and there's a lot of natural light outside this rundown house that they live in. We have the inclusion of him, you know, going out to see the bees. There's a lot more of a natural feeling in their world. And I think that that's indicative when you get to the end and you realize what is going on, which if you've seen the film, you will know. And I think that has been done on purpose to show us the humanness of the brothers and the fact that they are suffering from so much trauma, and you know it's eating away at them. They are human, you know, they are living, they are decaying. They're so sweaty. I don't know if anyone else noticed this in the film, but they were dirty, they were sweaty, you know, they were like real human beings. And Emma Stone was this perfect specimen, this alien-like thing that's got this reverse aging process. And she is, you know, living in this minimal, perfectly curated world that feels very outside of the real world that real human beings are living in. I loved the way that they were able to convey this visually just straight away in the film, the stark differences between the two. And then obviously we have their different belief systems and how they are moving through the world. Emma Stone's character is so obviously symbolic of everything that is evil in our world. She is representative of Big Pharma, making you sick to sell you the cure. She is Amazon, exploiting workers and monopolizing the industry and filling your homes with more things you don't need. She is the toxic boss, creating miserable work environments. And possibly the worst of all, she is posing as a strong female boss lady making big moves. This felt very reminiscent of Pedro Pascal's character in Eddington, who is, you know, seemingly like a good person who is for the community and for diversity, and yet underneath the surface he is just using that as a ploy to get what he wants. The relationship between the brothers is also very interesting, and as it was unfolding in the beginning, it reminded me of the Safdie brothers film Good Time and the relationship between the brothers in that. We have this very strong, very opinionated, very convincing brother played by Jesse Plemons, or in Good Time it was Robert Pattinson. And then we have this other brother who is, you know, more malleable and I think a little bit mentally challenged and is being manipulated really by the other brother. Plemons' character is, in my opinion, somewhat as evil as Emma Stone's. And I think we see this as the story goes on, and that's what makes it so complex and so interesting. We swing from having empathy for one to the other. We understand a lot of what they believe in or don't believe in because there are morsels of truth in all of the characters and what they are saying, and that's what makes our world right now so confusing. I did find Plemons' character particularly heartbreaking, especially as the film continued, and obviously towards the end, the more that was revealed about him, the more it just highlighted that it is so difficult for certain people in our society to, you know, live through trauma and being in a certain status in society and come out of that unscathed, which he clearly didn't. The conspiracy theorist is one that we are all very much aware of, and it's something that is made fun of online. And I think that Bugonia captured the humor in that the same way Eddington did. I thought that did that perfectly. And there was a lot of audibly laugh out loud moments for me in both of those films, even if maybe other people weren't laughing. But I think overall with Jesse Plemons' character, I did really agree with a lot of the things that he was saying. Some of the wilder takes that he had on society. They're definitely things that I have, given thought to before. It's just that he is taking it so far. His obsession with the gradual breaking down of society that they have manufactured is something that I do resonate with. But as Stone points out at the dinner table scene, which was probably my favorite, Plemons wants to believe that this is the case so he can be distracted by the believed distraction, that we are all chess pieces in their game and that there is a plan, because even knowing there is an evil plan is better than submitting to the idea that the world is just pure chaos. The more I think about this dinner table scene and conversation, the more I am realizing about the film's message, or at least how I interpreted it. His life is being dedicated to something, and this gives him meaning. He believes that he will change the world with his actions, and this is tied to his ego, and it's also helping him survive and make sense of the trauma that he has been through. When compared to how Stone is moving through the world, this is so vastly different. Stone is much more pragmatic, and she has that state of mind that, much like the bees, you must be resilient, you must prevail. She has that stiff upper lip conservatism to her, paired with obvious intelligence in spades that allow her to play within the system and win. She even says, as she is attacking Plemons at the dinner table when they have that tussle, that was such a tense scene. It was probably my favorite, but she says to him, "You will never win because you are a loser and I am a winner." And that is how she sees things. This dinner table scene was very poignant of how we are interacting with each other right now. The discourse between the two, the complete denial of being able to understand maybe where someone else is coming from, and this notion of my opinion is right, which is very much what we see online now. There is no room for nuance. No one is accepting of other people's opinions, and it's very much, I think this, therefore it is right. There is no fact and fiction. I think Stone even points out in this conversation that, lies, truth, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's kind of all the same because things have gotten so messy. None of us even know how to cope anymore. And that's how we end up in Jesse Plemons' position. Bugonia balanced these two universes so well, and it highlighted how both of them are flawed. It was able to do this without jamming down your throat one particular political belief, which I think is exactly what we need right now in cinema and just generally in life. One thing I do want to mention that is a little bit off topic here of the message of the movie is how Emma Stone was probably my favorite ever kidnappee in a movie. I don't mean for this to sound horrible at all, but most of the time when people get kidnapped, they're held hostage, they do complain a lot or they're crying. And I am like, come on, try and take control of the situation and negotiate with this person. And the way she acted is how I would like to imagine that I would act. God forbid that ever happens, of course. But I really enjoyed her grittiness, her willpower, and just how she persevered through the whole thing, even after, being electrocuted, getting her knee hit like that. There was just nothing stopping her. And at this point in the film, I believed that she was human. So I actually found it quite inspiring even that she was able to persevere. But then towards the end, we realized, maybe the fact that she's able to be like this is because she isn't human. And the reason that Jesse Plemons is just descending further and further into madness is because of his humanness, because we feel things so deeply and, there's only so much we can take. I love films that really have you flipping from one character to another of who you want to win or prevail. And a lot of the time I was really rooting for Emma Stone, and then I would flip and feel sorry for Jesse Plemons and want him to expose her or kind of save the world. So it was a really big roller coaster of emotions here, and I was glued to the screen the whole time. The balance that was struck here in deeply dark and fucked up and really heartbreaking, and then really quite funny, laugh out loud funny, is so hard to do, and Yorgos has just nailed this. The shock as well and the sort of scoffing that you have in some scenes for what they are saying or doing or believing is very similar to opening up a social media app, scrolling through and seeing someone make some big grand statement, or reading a news headline and thinking, oh my God, what is going on? And then, of course, we have to talk about the last act, because so often films are really great and then we get to the end and you're kind of getting anxious. You're thinking, how are you going to wrap this up? And ending does matter a lot. Bugonia ended on such a heartbreaking, devastating note. I was still sitting in the cinema after the credits had rolled. I was just immovable. It really, really affected me and gave a completely different tone to the rest of the film with those last few static scenes of the world ended. Leading up to the reveal of, the fact that Emma Stone is in fact an alien, it did cross my mind a little bit, but the humor did a really good job of putting you off that scent and tricking you into thinking how insane Plemons' character was to have gotten swept away with all of this. I think it was the absurdity of the calculator with the 59-digit code that she puts in, and then she gets sent a link, and then she goes into the cupboard and gets teleported. It's literally like word for word games I play with my 4-year-old that he comes up with. And I was just laughing so much in this scene because, it makes it seem so absurd. It seems so glaringly obvious that this is all in Jesse Plemons' mind, and you are so on board with that. And then that just gets completely subverted when he goes in the cupboard. You still think, she's gotten away, like she's gotten rid of this like crazy person, and only to see her return, grab the calculator, get in the cupboard and literally teleport to her mothership. I feel silly even describing this to you because it sounds ridiculous. When we see Stone get to her home planet and have a conversation with the emperors and all the people that they've been talking about through the whole film, and she decides that, yeah, they are really fucking everything up. They're not doing a good job and it's time for them to be terminated. They have that conversation, and in 1 second, she literally puts a pin in planet Earth, and that's it. It's over. And I think this plays into every fear that any any alien believer would have, that, they are controlling us or looking down on us, or having these existential crises of what does the world mean and why are we all here? How will this end? Who is in control? Does this really mean anything? All of those sort of paranoid thoughts that everyone has had at least once kind of came true in that scene, and then seeing the world just come to an end in a split second like that was really, really heartbreaking. And then the song that was played over the top, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, really played into the bee thing, and that if the bees die, we die. And also lyrically, that is about, war and the wasted lives in war and the sick cycle of life. So perfect for a film like Bugonia. If you really think about that end scene and, you really sit with it, I honestly think it could bring you to tears. Putting aside all of the laughs and the absurdity of the film, it's really scratching at something deeply sad, disturbing, terrifying, and really heartbreaking. Who is in control? What is really going on? And, where are we all going to end up if we continue on this path? It makes you want to hide under the covers and forget what you saw, yet it makes you want to rewatch the film and obsess over all of the details and really feed all your intrusive thoughts about life and what it all means. This was one of Lanthimos' finest entries, I personally believe. It was tight. It didn't waste any time. It had such a good message that was very accessible, and, there was still a lot to unpack and talk about, but it was there and it was easier to grasp than maybe it's been in his other films, which I think is important because it means that more people will be able to access it and enjoy it or glean something from it. It did all of that while still being very unique and very avant-garde. To see something this strange that is still wildly entertaining and on a big screen getting a big release is just remarkable. Every time I see one of his films in the cinema, they're just getting weirder and weirder and bigger, and it's so cool to see so many names attached to his projects, see him get more funding. I can't believe that these movies, they seem like they should be these tiny little releases that are hard to find, that no one has seen, yet they're these, huge films that are being, enjoyed. People are going to the movies to see them. So I think that that's a really positive thing for the future of cinema. 10 out of 10 from me. I absolutely loved it. I cannot fault it. Please let me know if you enjoyed it. What did you think? I have read some people not thinking that it's his strongest work. So definitely comment below. Let me know if there are other things that you noticed about it message-wise, because I do think it's one I'd like to rewatch to notice like every little thing that's going on the same way I did with Eddington. I also haven't seen Save the Green Planet, and this movie is based on that South Korean movie, I believe. So if you've seen that, let me know, does it stray very far from that? I would love to check that out as well now that I have seen Bugonia. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I am so excited to be able to have a space on the internet to talk about movies. If you want to check out some of my other reviews and listicle videos, I will pop them here for you, and I'll see you in the next one.